Hello and welcome to Engine Adventures towing review of this 2024 Lexus GX550. We're towing the camping trailer today. Weighs about 4,700 pounds. The batteries aren't in it, so those are about 60 pounds, and that also lowers the tongue weight pretty significantly down to actually the 10% range. So with the batteries in there, it's over 10% of the total trailer weight is tongue weight, but without the batteries it's about right on. So this trailer is just a big broad-sided beast. It's 8 feet wide, 10 feet tall, and just like towing a billboard. And this GX really has no problems, especially in the power front. It can pull, no issues on the power. It just goes. The KDSS system, or EKDSS, is quite effective as well at damping it. It did feel a little soft, and I was in tow haul mode the whole time, but it did feel a little bit softer. I think I'm gonna try going into the sport mode or sport plus mode to see as well while I'm in tow haul mode, see if it lets me change the drive mode, and I bet that stiffens it up as well. Let's take a look under the hood. All right, here under the hood we can see that we have twin turbo V6. This is 3.4 liter. It does have separate air boxes for each bank of cylinders, separate turbos. You can see the pressurized air hose coming up in. Anyway, it's hard to see the turbos down in there. This thing only puts out 349 horsepower. I say only because in other forms it puts out over 400, like 409 I believe. But in the GX they run a little bit smaller turbos, and it builds torque much faster at the sacrifice of a little bit of high-end power. And what I really love about this thing is that you get a mountain of torque. So 479 foot-pounds of torque, and that comes on really quite low in the RPM range. It's got a 10-speed automatic, so the 10-speed also helps keep you in the right RPM range that you need to be. And you'll see as you watch the video, this thing just tows without a problem. That's all I wanted to talk about under the hood. It flexes when you drive. It's kind of weird. Like, it doesn't take much to make that thing flex, which doesn't bother me too much, but when I notice it, I don't like it. Also, it's got this off-road roof rack, and that thing, I like the roof rack actually. It's maybe a little bit higher. I think because this is the Overtrail Plus, Lexus could have done something where this rack was down at this height. Would have been cooler. This is still a really nice rack. I do enjoy it. Over here, I want to look at payload. 1,545 pounds minus 151, so 1,400, let's call it. It's just under 1,400 pounds of payload, and that is quite a bit higher than the Land Cruiser, which is at 1,100 before you get all the add-ons. The Land Cruiser that I tested was 900 and something, like 940 or 950 pounds of payload. Going from that additional 400 pounds is a big difference, and some of that is, you know, the suspensions. Well, probably most of that's the suspension system with the GX and having the EKDSS, and then of course you have the additional power as well. So this thing's rated to tow 9,000 pounds, where the Land Cruiser is closer to the 6,000 pound range. And I'll go ahead and jump to a clip now where I'm putting this in. It's a bad design. Lexus has done this other times, but I just hate putting in hitch pins on this. Thankfully I have this locking ball mount that I could use instead. All right, I had this same problem on the LX600, but if we take a look at the space here, so here's where you got to put the pin, and look how much body cladding's in the way. So even if I really push on that, like I'm putting my whole knee into it and bending that, I can't get this hitch pin in. Granted, this hitch pin's long. It's a little bit longer than normal, but it's the one I like to use, and there is no way I'm getting that in there. Thankfully, I've got access to a bunch of hitches. This one has an internal locking mechanism, so I turn the key and you can see those pins slide out. It's hammered, it's a little old and ugly, but it's gonna work in this application. Really, I don't know why Lexus does this. I didn't have the problem on any of the Land Cruisers, but for some reason on Lexus, this extra big body cladding to make it look nice and fancy or whatever. After you pull this cover off, just doesn't work nicely when you're towing. So again, this one super easy. Slide it in. Let's see, right there. And then you just turn the key. So I can get the right spot. And now it's locked in. It's kind of hard to see down in there, but the pin, this one has 2 layers. It's like extra wide, which is another issue. It's not really that big of an issue, but because this thing is so wide, it's got the extra reinforcement around the outside. It makes it so that putting that pin in is a lot harder, whereas if you didn't have to go all the way through that outer one, it would be a lot easier, for example, on all these other pickup trucks here. Anyway, it's a little bit annoying, but there are ways around it. For example, if you get a locking ball mount like this one with the internal locking mechanism, this one's a Fastway Flash Secure, I think they call it. Anyway, they used to call it adjustable locking ball mount. Anyway, I think it's called Secure now, but this is a good hitch for situations where you can't get a pin in very easy, which really the only vehicles I've had that issue on are Lexus vehicles. The other interesting thing is this pin depth from where the pin goes to the ball mount is really short. So you can see on the F350, that's 2.5 inches in from the pin, from the center of the pinhole to where the outside of the receiver would be. This one's like 1.25 inches, really short. There are some factors that affect that, so it's a little bit less supported, so it's going to wear more. This is an aluminum ball mount, so it's going to wear more on this aluminum because of that. It has a longer lever arm against the aluminum right here, whereas if your receiver came out, it would have a shorter lever arm and do less damage to it. Looking inside, forgive the clutter a little bit. Not much over on that side as far as the towing stuff goes, but over here we have the trailer brake controller down here on the bottom. So it's not visible when you're driving, but you can reach. It's easy to reach and get to. I do like that it's easy to reach, but it's just not in a visible spot, which isn't great for towing. The vehicle itself, Toyota Lexus, put in a lot of effort in the towing capabilities of the new Land Cruiser, the new Lexus GX, but that's not the main focus. So you can clearly tell that the main focus here is the 4-wheel drive system. So you have 4-wheel drive stuff here, drive modes, multi-terrain select, and you do have the tow haul mode right here. So it does have a nice set of features for all that. Let me make sure the audio's off. And we're gonna go ahead and see what we can do with tow haul mode. I don't wanna sit here and idle for too long, but I do want to see what I can get with that. It does keep popping up an error that the trailer's connected and it isn't super happy about it, it seems like. I don't know why. It just keeps saying, oh, you can't use adaptive cruise mode, which is up on the screen right there. It gives me errors. So hit the tow haul mode button, or the light illuminates there, the tow haul mode's there. And like I said, I'm gonna try, okay, and it won't let me change drive modes because I'm in tow haul mode. So we're just gonna stay in the tow haul mode during the whole test. Other than that, I mean, super nicely appointed, of course, and you can go see the regular overview review to get all of that information. But anyway, nice seats, heated, cooled. It's got auto modes. There you go, auto modes for the seats. The air will automatically detect who's in what seats and only send air to those seats. I don't know if that's a great feature or not. It's just an interesting thing that it can do. It is full-time 4-wheel drive, which is a benefit when towing. I do love the center differential on this. I believe it is the torsion style center differential that has the e-locker as well. My favorite style of differential, whether it's the center, front, or rear, but this means that you can drive in 4-wheel drive low on pavement and turn as sharp as you want, and it's not going to bind. So for example, you're backing a trailer up a steep hill into a tight parking spot or something like that. Putting it in 4-low will give you a lot more control. Yes, it's an automatic transmission, so that's not as necessary, but it's still better. If you had a manual, that is a really nice feature to have. Let's just go ahead and get into the towing portion of the video. Hopefully this isn't too hard to see. I have that green line lined up dead center on the ball. I had to turn it a little bit to keep it centered. Still turning it more to keep it centered. And let's see where it lines up. The trailer's a little low, so I didn't back all the way underneath it, but that would have gone on. So this is just slightly off center, but that's the rear view camera. I don't know how well that's showing up. It's just slightly off center. Center line's like here. So from there to there, it's not that big of a deal. I was still able to back up and hook up pretty easily. I much prefer centered cameras. I don't know why they don't do that on a lot of vehicles. It just makes things a little smoother. It's an easy design thing. Just put it in the center. It looks better. I mean, symmetrical anyway if you do that. But in this case, the programming and everything worked fine. All right, so I'm driving on the freeway with the trailer in tow. I won't be able to see the trailer very well, but anyway, maybe here's a better view. You can see the trailer there. This GX does pretty darn well. It's windy today. I can feel the trucks pushing it around a little bit. And for this weight, it's recommended to use a sway control hitch. And I would always recommend using weight distribution hitch. So honestly, it's not doing too bad as far as stability goes, but I can feel the trailer pushing the GX around just a little bit, you know, head-on wind or side winds. When I get a gust of wind going across the side, I can feel it push the trailer a little bit. It is more windy today, like I said. I can see all the flags waving and stuff, but it's more windy today than it has been in other tests. For example, when I tested the Land Cruiser, it's more windy now than when I tested that. So I would say they perform similarly. This and the Land Cruiser are very similar. I mean, they're the same platform, so it's going to be that way. But the suspension on this honestly feels about the same. So this has EKDSS with all the hydraulic stuff. It doesn't have the height adjustable or anything like that, but it does have the hydraulic shock setup, which can help dampen and control things a little better. But honestly, I don't feel too much of a difference. And I don't know if you can see the hood. It's not bad, but the Land Cruiser didn't really do this. I can see the hood flexing as just driving along normally, but especially as you kind of go over bumps and stuff, it'll flex a little bit more. Yeah, don't know why the GX hood does that. The Land Cruiser one doesn't. But really no problem in cruising at 2,000 RPM, keeping 68 miles an hour, 67 miles an hour. Just not a problem to tow with this thing at all. So a couple things to talk about here, which I'm sure you already saw in the beginning, but the trailer brake controller's down here. It's not a bad spot. I can reach it, but I cannot see it. So it's behind the steering wheel. So down here, tow haul mode's right there, so it's easy to reach. But also you can set up the gauges as such. So you have oil temperature, tranny temp, oil pressure, coolant temp, and then on the other side, I've got fuel and battery. And then up top, of course, the trailer brake controller. So you can set up the gauges fairly effectively. I do like that you have all that information. There's no numbers, which I would prefer to have actual values, but take what you can get, right? Like this is better than a lot of other systems out there, so I don't really have an issue with it. I like having all that information available, which is quite nice. Wish I would have started the camera earlier, but I'm not even really trying. And you probably can't see the head-up display. I can see it. So another issue I had with these gauges is I don't have the tachometer here, but I can see it in the heads-up display. So not a big deal not having the tachometer on these screens. But anyway, accelerating up this hill. This isn't a super steep grade. I'd probably call it a 6%. Accelerating from a stop up to 55 miles an hour. I mean, they hit 4,000 RPM, but I was very comfortable with it. I was accelerating probably faster than I even needed to. This engine is the 3.4 liter twin turbo V6, but it's tuned totally differently. Has different turbos than the LX and the Tundra and Sequoia and LS for that matter. Anyway, this engine is different in a lot of ways, And if you remember the recall that Toyota had for those 3.5 liters, the GX was not affected by that at all because it's a different engine from those. I mean, yes, it's mostly the same, but they tuned it differently. They put different turbos in there. These things spool up super quick. You get a lot of torque down low. There's no turbo lag on this one. I didn't notice a whole lot in the Tundra. In the Lexus LS sedan and LX, I did notice quite a bit. In the Sequoia, it's got the hybrid system. I didn't notice it, any turbo lag at all. I loved the Sequoia. This thing drives more like the Sequoia than like the LX, which to me is much better. So I was I was saddened by it because the LX is the top tier, and the same with the LS sedan. Those are the top tier luxury vehicles that Lexus offers, and the tuning on that engine, maybe they've developed it better since then, but it had so much turbo lag down low, it wasn't as responsive. And I know that can be adjusted with the drive modes a little bit, and maybe they have dialed back the throttle a little bit on it or something, but anyway, with both of them, it just didn't feel luxury-esque to me. Like when you're in a luxury car, a high-end car, or other vehicle, you expect when you push on the gas pedal to feel that torque, and you get that in the GX. Like this thing, it just feels amazing. Excellent for towing. There's no lack of power. This doesn't have a super high horsepower rating. I'll put it up on the screen, but I want to say it's 349 maybe, and I believe the torque's 469, but the torque just comes on so early and so low, it really moves quite nicely. Alright, we're moving into the steep hill climb section, and it's funny, that's the phrase I use for the off-road video. So anyway, this grade, I can't even remember what the average is. Average is something like 6% over the whole grade. Gains 1,500 feet over a few miles, and we're like 40, I think we're about 5,000 feet right here. Maybe a little more, and at the top we're 65, 67, something like that. So as we go up, we have a pretty twisty road, and speed limit is about 45 miles an hour. Not terrible. You're able to get up, third, fourth gear. If you're in the first gear range, you're down around 20 miles an hour. With these 10 speeds, it's not as big of a deal, but that can really hurt the transmission. Heat it up quick, but we'll see how this does. I don't expect any issues at all today. The GX is rated to tow 9,000-ish pounds, and this trailer rather, is about 4,700. So we're about half, a little more than half of what it's rated to tow. So not likely going to have any issues. In contrast to that, the Land Cruiser is only rated to tow 6,000 pounds. So, and I'm already I'm not even at 3,000 RPM, and it's starting to get away from me a little bit. I had to back off because it's accelerating up this hill. Like right here, I bet this section's a 10% plus grade. This is pretty steep for this little bit. And it has sections like that that are less steep, some that are more steep. The average comes out to about 6%, but certainly tight, twisty corners with steep grades, and no problem at all. This thing tows like an absolute unit for what it is. It's comparably maybe a mid-sized truck size. It's actually a little bigger. I don't know what to classify this as. What competitors does the GX really have? There aren't many for sure. So it's about the size of a Durango, I guess. And yeah, I mean, it tows very solidly. Body on frame vehicle, of course. It just seems to add a little bit to the towing feel, but there aren't really many vehicles in this class, if any, in the US. We have maybe the 4Runner's pretty close to this. nothing from Infiniti would be, or Nissan would really be like this, because I don't consider the Pathfinder to be the same. It's maybe about the same size almost. Tahoe's too big. The Grand Wagoneer is bigger, all that kind of stuff. Those are all bigger. Those are Sequoia sized. So this is kind of a unique vehicle in the segment, but regardless, it tows just as well or better than the mid-size truck market does. There's no issues at all. Like I hardly have to put any effort into it. Let me flip over to the tachometer just so you can see what it's doing. It's not happy. I hooked up the trailer and it just keeps constantly giving me a warning about some systems are disabled or whatever. But you can see there we're just barely at 2,500 RPM. And that was a steeper section, so as we come up here we'll back off. It just has no problem. It doesn't care that the trailer's behind it. You can feel it, of course. It's not as fast as it normally would be, but it still gets up and moves just fine. All right, this is our fuel mileage going up the hill, 7.6 miles per gallon. I'm gonna shut it off. Hopefully that stays. But anyway, we'll do our review right here. All right, we're gonna see what it does going downhill. Speed limit's 40. I don't use cruise control when towing normally, so I'm not going to try that. I know, especially in the new vehicles, a lot of times the cruise control will also apply the service brakes, not just engine brake. You can see we're at 3,000 RPM. I was barely touching the brakes there. So it does kind of grade brake. It holds gears, and when you push on the brake, it'll downshift a gear or two automatically. I do generally, if I'm towing with an automatic, I leave it in automatic mode and don't manually shift unless I'm really trying to do something. We're gonna try that, see what it does, and if it's working just fine, then we won't mess with it. But if I feel like there's more engine braking that could be had, then I'll manually downshift. There are a lot of vehicles with variable geometry turbos. All the new diesel pickup trucks, for example, well, I shouldn't say all of them, but the 3/4 ton and 1 ton trucks, they have a diesel exhaust brake, and that's effectively done through the turbo, because the variable geometry features, they can kind of block off the turbos and add a lot more back pressure into the engine. As far as I know, and I know it was this way for the Tundra, but I'm not 100% on this specific turbo to the GX, but it's a standard, basic, regular old turbo. So I might make that sound like a negative thing, but it's really not. It's a positive in long-term reliability and stuff like that. But on the flip side of it, you don't have some of those options like the exhaust brake, where it can close off the turbo and make a lot more back pressure into the engine to help slow it down. So we'll just see what the grade braking does on its own. I'm actually going to gain a little bit of speed when we hit the steep part here right after this corner. When we hit that, I'll start to slow down and see kind of how well it does. This trailer is such a billboard that it creates enough wind resistance anyway, that normally if you're being aware, paying attention, as long as there's nothing comes up that causes you to stop really fast, really short, if you let off the brake, this thing's going to coast and slow down. We are picking up just a little bit of speed here, and we're kind of to where I want to be. So I'm on the brake, and I want to see if it downshifts. So it downshifted, and it's kind of holding the speed. I'll push the brake a little harder, see if it downshifts again. And no, it's not really downshifting again, but I'm not really hard on the brake or anything. I mean, this is a long downhill. I'm going to try the manual shift now. 4th gear. We'll drop down to 3rd, maybe even into 2nd. We'll see how this does. It's basically holding in 3rd gear at 3,500 RPM, and try one more downshift, and it's still holding. So not a ton of back pressure or grade braking or whatever you want to call it built into this engine. I'm not trying to go to 10th, there we go, just trying to go to drive. So I'm gonna let it do its thing now. It was holding it back, as you can tell. It's just coasting right along, picking up speed. If I push the brake, it's going to downshift. Maybe. That's really not downshifting much, but it did slow down. Of course, pushing the brake, but there's just so much wind resistance. It's hard to do a good grade braking test with this trailer. What I do need to test is with a low flatbed, a little bit more weight, low center of gravity, and something without all the wind resistance. I need to figure out a trailer. I probably should figure out and get one ordered or something like that, get one bought, so I can do a better test for grade braking, simply for that reason. Everything else I prefer this trailer for, but for grade braking, it's just not as good of a test because there's so much wind resistance. Thank you for watching Engine Adventures tow review of this 2024 Lexus GX. It tows very, very well. It's about the size of a mid-sized truck, and it tows at least as good as all the mid-sized trucks on the market. Excellent torque from that twin-turbo V6, comes on low in the RPM range and just pulls and pulls and pulls. Has no problem pulling this 4,700-pound billboard, going at freeway speeds, up hills. It just goes. It doesn't care. Transmission never heated up or anything, but it's not going to, most likely, when it's this cool outside, even though we're at decent elevation. And it just went very, very well. I would highly recommend it. Of course, there are some things. If you're going to tow an 8-foot wide trailer, you're going to need some mirror extensions. I don't know how that works. I don't know if there's any on the market yet. I mean, you've got all sorts of stuff down here on the bottom, so getting an extension for that might be a little difficult. But these mirrors are too narrow for the width of this trailer. So I recommend towing a skinnier trailer, of course, if you're going to be towing with this. But other than that, I have no complaints with it, really. The hitch part of it, hooking up the hitch, that's a little bit of a pain as well, just because it's hard to get a hitch pin in there. They don't give you a lot of room. But overall, an excellent vehicle. It's great to drive empty, you know, no load on it, but it also handles really quite well when it is loaded. So if you liked what you saw, be sure to hit the subscribe button, ring the bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down, but let me know why. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear whether you liked it, what you liked about it. If you didn't like it, the things that you didn't like about it. Anyway, we're all out here to improve and get you guys the information that you want to hear. Once again, thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.